is Dan Byron, and I am running for Congress in Pennsylvania's ninth District. This is my campaign manager, Chrissy, and we wanted to answer some questions that have been submitted to our campaign.
All right. So, you already said who you are. So, where are you from?
Well, I'm originally from Connecticut. I was born in a small town, Derby, Connecticut. I moved here about 10 years ago when my dad pursued his childhood love interest. She's now my mom. Um, Living here for the last 10 years here in Williamsport has been eventful. I've watched this city grow from somewhere that weren't stores that were open 24 hours a day to we're getting our first Chick-fil-A here in the next month or so.
Hopefully soon.
So the city is obviously growing, and the area is doing well. So I'm really excited to be here from Williamsport and represent this amazing part of the country.
All right. Why are you running?
You know, when I was thinking about running and I was thinking about why I wanted to run, it boiled down to just one simple idea. My son, he's 4 years old. Um, I don't feel optimistic that he's going to have the same opportunities or even better opportunities that I had growing up. And for me, that's unacceptable. It should always be our goal to pass on a better country than we have. You should always return something better than you received it. And I don't think we're currently on track to do that.
Absolutely. Why are you a Democrat?
For me, the Democratic Party is the party of the working class. Now, I will admit that I don't always feel that our party has lived up to that. Um, but I do feel our party has lived up to two core tenets that are vitally important to me, and that is the ideas of tolerance and inclusion. I'm a Democrat because I believe that at the end of the day, we should be tolerant, accepting, and inclusive of our neighbors.
Absolutely. So our country and our district are made up of more than just Democrats. So what do you have to say to the Republican and independent voters?
Right now, in this moment, this is a moment where we have to put our party aside. It isn't about doing what's best for the Republican Party, what's doing what's best for the Democratic Party, or what's doing what's best for independents. It's about what's doing best for America, right? At the end of the day, I am an American first. I am a Democrat second. I would argue potentially I'm a Democrat third or fourth after being a father, after being a worker, after being somebody who lives paycheck to paycheck. So if you're a Republican in this district and you're an independent in this district and you don't feel like you've been heard, that you've been listened to, I'm going to make the argument to you that it's not because the Democrats aren't listening. It's not because the Republicans aren't listening. It's because they're all not listening. And you should support somebody. Hopefully, you can support me, somebody who's going to listen.
Okay. Who is your inspiration for running?
So, when I was thinking about running, one of the first thoughts that came to my mind was I am just a retail worker. I make under $45,000 a year. I'm, nothing special. And that was discouraging. The idea that, well, I'm not going to be able to raise enough funds to run. I'm not going to be able to compete with a millionaire to get into DC. But what I came to the realization on is that we do have individuals who've come from that background. For me, that's AOC. Seeing a waitress from the Bronx go from being a waitress in the Bronx to being one of the loudest, proudest voices in DC, it is inspiring. It shows that anybody who has the gall to stand up and say something can get there.
Okay. All right. So we have a question from Lisa B. of Muncie. She asks, why do you keep calling out the Democratic Party?
Well, as a progressive, as somebody who believes in progressive ideals and believes that we should be moving this country forward, I don't see our party doing enough. And I don't think I'm alone in that. I think that one of the reasons why we saw so many people turn to the Republican Party, Donald Trump, and MAGA is because they felt abandoned. They felt abandoned by not just the establishment Republican Party, but by our party. And they were looking for anybody who was willing to give an answer. And in this moment, I think when we look at the last 10, 20 years, can we truly say that we're proud of what our party's accomplished? I mean, we've lost the Roe v. Wade fight, we've lost the Supreme Court, we've lost the legislature, we've lost the White House. It's loss after loss after loss. And whether you're running a business, running a team, or running a party, you should be able to reflect, analyze, and make adjustments. If we're going to impose purity tests on the people who are running for office and expect them to just toe the party line or else, then are we better than MAGA Republicans?
All right. So Tammy S. of Tremont, hope I'm saying that right, asks, I live in the West End. I've never seen or heard of Do Nothing Dan on the west end of Schuylkill County. Can you tell me, is he always up Trump's butt?
So I would say the short answer to that is probably yes. The more long answer to that is when we elect individuals whose sole goal is their own personal enrichment, it's not really something we should be surprised at that they don't care enough to come and listen to us. I'll say with some level of respect that, Dan Muser did do a private session where he did listen to some constituent questions. But when your district has been asking for a town hall, when your district has been begging you to come to the community and explain why we're losing benefits, why we're losing program after program, why you support Doge mass cutting programs that our communities rely on, and you refuse because you're too scared to face the people who you're supposed to represent. I mean, should we really be surprised when we're electing those type of people into this office?
Okay. Amanda C. of Berwick asks, how do you plan to stop career politicians from doing nothing and taking home more money than the average American?
That's actually, for me, that's probably the most important part of our platform. So, what I would like to see happen is for us to return power to the people. Our country was never meant to be run by corporations. It was never meant to be run by only the wealthy. When the founders originally looked at this country and looked at what we could do, what they what they were looking for was an idea that we could vote and elect individuals who best represented us. And right now, that's not happening. The people have lost their control of elections, and in doing so, have lost their control of Congress. Money has become what it all revolves around. And what I would like to see happen is for us to impose congressional term limits so that there can't be a coalescing of power around individuals who've been in office for 30, 40 years. And I'm not just talking about Republicans like Mitch McConnell. I'm talking about Democrats like Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. Even with the best of intentions, when you have been in an office for that long, there is bound to be a corrupting influence, even if it's not intentional. Just the idea that for you to pass legislation, there is a give and a take. There's, doing favors for so and so. There's, you know, giving this to get that. Those debts build up over time. That burden builds up over time. And so, what I would really like to see happen is for us as a country to move away from that. That starts with congressional term limits. It starts with campaign finance reform. It starts with financial accountability, making sure that members of Congress can't use their foresight and their influence to invest in the stock market and ride waves that everyday people can't ride.
All right. Hector R. of Pottsville asks, the Latino community is under attack. Do you think the politicians allowing the president to avoid due process should be prosecuted?
I mean, let's start with the reality. The reality is that in this moment right now, the Latino community is the scapegoat for all of these decisions that the Trump administration is making. It is not true that immigrants are taking your job. It is not true that they are a pull on society or a weight on society. This country was founded by immigrants. This country was founded for immigrants. And it has always been a country that has been stronger because we are stronger together than we are apart. But it's a lot harder to justify removing due process if you're doing it to a group of people that you can't scapegoat. So to start, I believe that we need to make sure in 2026 we're electing individuals who will boldly say that, yes, I want to make sure that the legislative branch upholds its power to check the executive branch. There's no reason why Congress, other than the fact that it has become subservient to the administration, there's no reason why they shouldn't be investigating this administration and deciding whether or not it is violating law. And unfortunately, the judicial branch, judges, no matter how much they may try to fight it, they have no power to hold the administration accountable. They can just issue opinions. It is up to Congress to hold them accountable.
NW of Bloomsburg asks, how do you plan to protect women's access to healthcare?
So let me start by saying, to me, this is one of those examples of where I think our party has disappointed, right? In spite of our best efforts, in spite of all the work that we've done to protest, to speak out, Roe v. Wade has been repealed, right? In spite of our best efforts to make sure that it doesn't happen, we're losing access to Medicare. And that access to Medicare is going to affect mostly low-income single moms and their kids. So what I first want to say is that we really need to get back to basics on that and just address the fact that healthcare is not something you can take away, right? Regardless, women's healthcare, the healthcare of children, anybody's healthcare is not something that should be a bargaining chip in Congress. We shouldn't be using people's well-being as a tool to get other political endeavors passed through. It is a human right to be healthy and well. And as a society, we should want our neighbors to be well. For myself, in Congress, it is my intention to support policies that are going to make healthcare more affordable and accessible. It's a core part of my platform. And I hope that in representing people in this district that I can move that ball forward as it keeps moving back.
Absolutely. Okay. Then we have John T. of Troy. The DOGE cuts are taking away programs in our communities. How do you plan to bring these programs back?
Well, let's start with whenever you dismantle and destroy something, no matter how hard you try, building it back, it's never going to be the same. And maybe that's an opportunity, right? So I think when we're promising what we're going to do, when we're talking about what we're going to do in 2026, as a party, we shouldn't be telling people that we're going to build it back the way it was, because clearly it wasn't working for people. If it was, there wouldn't have been such overwhelming support for ripping it all down. So I would like to build it back in a way that is better, and build it back in a way that better channels the funds that we're allocating to the people who need it most. You know, what that looks like exactly, I'm not 100% sure. But I think that's why there's a value in us having conversations and having a plan to get together and make it work better for Americans.
Absolutely. All right, then Elena R. of Bloomsburg asks, who our current president is, and the lack of diversity in our world, how does electing another white man help our state or our country?
That's an extremely fair question, right? Let me give a little bit of background. So, growing up, I grew up in a diverse, low-income community. I had more in common with the people in my neighborhood who maybe looked nothing like me, believed nothing like me, and spoke a language that I didn't understand than I ever had with somebody who looked like me and lived in a mansion. In my personal opinion, it is the separation of the working class into communities that the wealthy want to fight that is causing most of the issues we have now. We're so busy debating with each other about whether or not we should follow Christian values or Muslim values, whether or not we should be focused on black issues or white issues, whether or not we should be focused on whether we're men or women, even whether or not our sexuality is important. When what we should be talking about is what is our commonality and who is holding us all down.
Absolutely. And that kind of ties into our next question, bringing up sexuality and such. Lionel S. of Piston asks, with it being Pride Month, how do you plan to support the LGBTQ community? And I just want to say thank you for asking that question, Lionel.
So, to me, the most important thing we can do is get away from this idea that the LGBTQ community aren't just people, like all of us, right? They're not a community that's there for us to try to win over for political purposes. A lot of times, and I'll speak honestly here, within our party, I find it sometimes gross how we will go out of our way to champion our pride and our support of pride, but we're not following it up, right? Just like the Republican Party will use veterans in the same way. Our party fails sometimes to really deliver. What I would like to see is us just establish that human rights, period, are not something that's up for debate. Your right to love, your right to love who you want and live in your home is not something the government should be involved in. Your neighbor shouldn't care who you go to bed with. Your neighbor should care that you both are able to go to bed in a safe and secure neighborhood. That's what should matter, not your sexuality.
Absolutely. Nancy H. asks, Dan Muser does nothing for our state or district. I've lived here for over 40 years and have never felt so unrepresented. How will you be different?
So let me start with a little bit of the philosophy I have for what a congressman is supposed to be. It's my view that our elected leaders are supposed to be servants. They're supposed to serve their community. They're supposed to serve the people who have elected them to represent them. As somebody who has always worked in customer service, I believe that that is the model for what a representative is supposed to be. If I'm elected, I will bring that mentality to Congress. When I'm there, I'm not there to do my agenda. I'm there to do what's best for this district. And the only way to do that is to talk to the people that are supposed to be represented by me, is to get into the community and ask, what do you need? And deliver on at least addressing those issues and trying to address those issues. Somebody like Dan Muser doesn't come and visit our communities because at the end of the day, he's not voting for your interest. He's voting for whatever the Republican Party told him to vote for, whatever the rich donors told him to vote for, whatever's going to line his own pocket and the pocket of his wealthy friends. So, yeah, I don't have wealthy friends, and so I'm just going to continue to represent the people who I live with, the neighborhood that I live in.
Right. Katie W. of Hamburg asks, what is the biggest threat to our democracy and how do we stop it?
Right now, it's the rule of law, right? The complete absence of the rule of law. Every day, there is a new attack on the way things have always been done. And I'm not going to say that I necessarily think that things should be done the way they've always been done, right? I'm a big proponent of change. It's one of the reasons why I personally identify as a progressive, is I think there's a lot of things we can do better and do differently. But some of the things that we do are there for a good reason. Due process, habeas corpus, these are fundamental ideas that our founders established because they saw what happened in a world in which they didn't exist. We have never had the misfortune of living in that world. We have never had the misfortune of having a king. And right now, the biggest threat to our democracy is that. On the 250th anniversary of our country in 2026, we should not be debating whether or not we're ready to have a king again, whether or not we're going to hand over our freedoms and our rights to a government who, let's be honest, can we really trust them? One of the questions I ask openly is, where are the libertarians? Where are the individuals who spent the Obama years talking about the overreaches of the federal government? How do you balance that criticism of that administration with what this administration is currently doing? Hopefully, in 2026, the biggest thing that we can do to fight this absolute disintegration of our rule of law is come together around more than just party. I think we spoke about it earlier, but I don't want this to be a Democratic campaign. I want this to be a campaign that is a coalition of action, a coalition of people who can set aside their differences, even if it's just for one cycle, to say, that is not the country I want to leave behind, and we need to defend it.
All right. This is one of my questions. What are your goals for after politics?
So, for one, let me just say, I don't want to do this. I wish that I didn't feel that our country was moving in a direction that I needed to do this.
Yeah.
And it's my hope that in a short period of time, I can go to DC, I can represent this district well, I can deliver on the core tenets of this campaign and deliver power back to the people in a way that I can step aside. I've never believed that politicians should have it as a career. I don't intend to make this my career. I would really like to be done with this in a very short period of time and return back to being a father. Return back to a simple life of working, making a living, coming home, and not staying up till 2 a.m. to run a political campaign.
Okay. More of a lighthearted one. Who is the biggest inspirational historical figure to you?
So, I think for me, one of the most inspirational individuals in American history is Teddy Roosevelt. So, some people may not know, but Teddy Roosevelt was a Republican. But when he saw his party not representing his values, he stepped aside from it. He ran against it. He created the Bull Moose Party, and he ran for president under his own banner, under his own ideas. And he boldly stood up for those ideas. He didn't just toe the line and do what he was told by party leadership. And to me, that's the most American thing you can do, is have your own ideas, your own values, and fiercely defend them.
Absolutely. Now, we've talked a lot about your campaign, your thoughts on current events, things like that. So we're going to tone it down, do some more lighthearted questions just to get to know you a little better.
Okay.
So first question, fire, water, earth, or airbender?
Airbender.
Why?
I like the idea of not having earthly attachments.
Fantastic. I'm a firebender. Personally, I like candles a lot, so it'd make life easy. How would you describe yourself with one word?
Funny.
Can't argue that. Okay. What is your favorite food?
Pizza.
It's a little basic, but that's a safe one.
In fairness, I spent my entire adolescence in New Haven, Connecticut. Shout out. Some of the best pizza in the country. I will debate that until the day I'm dead. And if you don't believe me, New Haven's a great place to visit.
I will have to take your word for it. I've not ever had the best pizza.
When this is over, we'll go.
Okay. What's your favorite pastime when you're not doing all this?
Games. I love games. Video games, board games, just games. Making games.
What? You have tried to make a game before, and that was a lot of fun. What's your favorite game, though? All time.
My favorite game all time is a kind of obscure deep cut board game called Diplomacy. It's kind of like if Risk and chess met. We'll leave it at that.
Yeah, you lost me a little bit, mind games, but good for you. What is your favorite season?
Fall.
No follow-up questions. That's the only correct answer. Especially from being from Connecticut, beautiful fall foliage, now living in Pennsylvania, gorgeous fall foliage.
Yeah.
This question you will be heavily judged on.
Yeah.
Chappell Roan versus Lady Gaga.
Okay, so if you had asked me that question a year ago, solid Lady Gaga answer.
Mm-hmm.
But I am currently on repeat Pink Pony Club. It is kind of my personal motivation anthem. So Chappell Roan.
I was joking. There was no right answer there. That's a great answer, though. Chili's versus Fridays.
Chili's.
Never been. Next question.
We'll fix that.
A lot of things we'll have to fix.
Yeah.
Favorite flavor of ramen?
Beef.
Have you ever tried kimchi?
I've not tried kimchi ramen.
I will bring you one. It is delicious.
The soy one is also
a
really underrated one, and if you make it with beef broth, I would argue it's the better version of the beef one. Just, hint.
Oh, that's a good idea. Okay, Thanksgiving or Christmas?
Thanksgiving.
Lots of food.
Yeah.
Tacos, burritos, or quesadillas?
So, the current taco that is responsible for our government is not one that I enjoy. However, I definitely would pick 3 well-made tacos on corn tortillas over a burrito or a quesadilla.
I do love that you included that question because of how we met. We met working at Qdoba.
Also true.
So that is a very near and dear question. I personally like burritos a little more, but that's okay. If you could switch lives with someone for one day, who would it be and why? It can be me if you'd like.
Oh, man. I'm going to pick Donald Trump so that I can resign from office.
That's way better than picking me. Yep. And final question. We all know by now you're doing this uncaffeinated. You're staying up to all hours of the night doing everything. But is Dan Byron an early bird, a night owl, or a permanently exhausted pigeon?
So I'm a full-time dad. I'm a full-time student. I'm a full-time employee. I somehow am finding the time to run for Congress. I am definitely a permanently exhausted pigeon.
Perfect.
So I think that's it.
I think that's it. That's all I have.
Thanks.